Advisory. Some episodes of the 1836 podcast are not intended for all audiences, due to details that might be considered disturbing. Listener and viewer discretion is advised.
On this episode, we share the life story of the Cherokee Bad Man, Henry Starr. Henry Starr was born on December 2, 1873, near Fort Gibson, nestled in the Osage Hills of what was at the time known as the Cherokee Nation in Indian Territory, which today is part of Muskogee County, Oklahoma. His parents were Mary Scott Starr and George Hop Starr, and he was the nephew of Sam Starr, whose wife was none other than the notorious bandit queen, Belle Starr. Despite this background, his mother's family was educated and respectable, but Henry's life took a different path. Growing up in Indian Territory, Henry was exposed to the world of outlaws and gangs from a young age. After his father's death in 1886, his mother, Mary, was left to raise 3 children alone. Mary later remarried C.N.N. Walker. Henry had a rocky relationship with his stepfather, leading him to leave home after the 6th grade. He then relocated to the area around Nowata, where he started working as a cowboy. This is when Henry had his first encounter with the law. It occurred when he was arrested for transporting whiskey, a charge he claimed was due to unknowingly borrowing a wagon containing alcohol. At the age of 16, he pleaded guilty, but always maintained his innocence.
Henry's criminal activities escalated when he was later arrested for horse theft, another charge he denied, leading him to jump bail. This set him on a path of crime alongside accomplices Ed Newcomb and Jesse Jackson, initially targeting stores and railroad depots. In 1893, they robbed the Nowata Railroad Depot, causing the United States Marshals to intensify their pursuit for him. In a shootout, Starr killed United States Deputy Marshal Floyd Wilson, making him a wanted man for murder. His gang then turned their sights on Banks, hitting their first in Caney, Kansas on March 28, 1893, and later the People's Bank in Bentonville, Arkansas. Fleeing to California, Henry was captured in Colorado Springs and then extradited back to Fort Smith, Arkansas, where he would face Judge Isaac Parker's gallows for the murder of Wilson. Although he argued self-defense, he was convicted and sentenced to hang. His appeals reached the United States Supreme Court, leading to new trials where he eventually pleaded guilty to manslaughter, receiving a 25-year sentence.
It was during this prison sentence that Henry made friends with one of the country's most notorious outlaws, Crawford Goldsby, more famously known as Cherokee Bill. On the evening of July 26, 1895, Cherokee Bill made an escape attempt, during which he ambushed the guards as they were locking him in his cell. Bill fired at guard Lawrence Keating, hitting him first in the stomach. As Keating tried to escape down the corridor, Bill shot him once more, this time in the back. Despite this, other guards managed to stop Goldsby from escaping, though they couldn't enter the cell. Henry Starr then persuaded the guards to allow him to enter the cell so he could talk to Cherokee Bill. Henry was able to talk the outlaw into giving up his weapon and surrender. This later played a role in President Theodore Roosevelt pardoning Henry. After his release, Henry relocated to Tulsa, Oklahoma, where he tried to settle down. He worked in his mother's restaurant and began a family with Ollie Griffin, with whom he had a son named Theodore Roosevelt Starr. By 1908, with Oklahoma now a state, Henry, along with Kid Wilson, returned to crime and began robbing banks in Oklahoma, Kansas, and Colorado.
In 1909, Henry was captured in Arizona and later convicted for the Amity, Colorado bank robbery. He was incarcerated at Cannon City Prison, where he occupied his time by studying law, serving as a trustee, and authoring his life story in a book called Thrilling Events. He was paroled in 1913 and briefly ran a restaurant in Holly, Colorado, but soon returned to criminal activities. Between 1914 and 1915, Henry was implicated in numerous bank robberies in Oklahoma, earning the nickname of the Bandit King. A victim identified Henry from a photograph, leading to a significant reward for his capture. On March 27, 1915, Henry and his gang attempted to rob 2 banks at the same time in Stroud, Oklahoma, leading to a shootout. Henry and Louis Estes were wounded and captured, but the rest of the gang escaped with nearly $6,000. Henry was convicted again and sentenced to another 25 years in prison.
But after serving only a few years, he was released in 1919. A free man once again, Henry ventured into the movie industry, starring in A Debtor to the Law, a film about his Stroud robbery. Despite this success, he found himself in financial troubles, and the lure of crime was irresistible. On February 18, 1921, Starr attempted what is considered the first car-based bank robbery in Harrison, Arkansas. This would be Henry Starr's last bank heist. During the robbery, Henry was shot by the former bank president W.J. Myers. 4 days later, on February 22, 1921, Henry Starr died as a result of the gunshot wound. He was 47 years old. Sticking to his outlaw code, Henry never revealed his accomplices. His body was transported back to Oklahoma, where he was buried in the Dewey Cemetery, near Dewey, Oklahoma. Inscribed on Henry's tombstone says the following: "The Cherokee Bad Man. I've robbed more banks than any man in America." Over his 32-year spree, Henry Starr bragged to have outdone the combined robberies of the James Younger and Doolin Dalton gangs, claiming to have robbed 21 banks, netting about $60,000 in today's money. Henry Starr's legacy is one of complexity: an author, an actor, and most infamously, an outlaw bank robber. His life story blurs the lines between myth and reality, seen by some as a villain and by others, a folk legend. On this episode, we share the life story of the Cherokee Bad Man, Henry Starr.